While Facebook and YouTube are facing intense backlash for the spread of fake news, Instagram has quietly become a new breeding ground for extremist views. That's according to a new report from The Atlantic, which highlights just how easy it is to fall down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole on the Instagram app, especially for teenagers.
Instagram is owned by Facebook, which is struggling to get rid of fake accounts on its site.
So joining us now is the author of that story, Atlantic staff writer Taylor Lawrence. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were just talking about this in a commercial break, how for me, when I read your piece, I was so surprised that this existed on Instagram because I follow generally journalist friends, jeans, like jeans and boots, guitars, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, what are all these weird accounts with all this stuff on there? I had the same reaction with Facebook, and you engage a lot more on Facebook, for example, with accounts that share things that are kind of strange.
I see the cray-cray.
She sees the cray-cray. So I was just really interested to read about this. What kind of materials did you encounter?
Yeah, well, I mean, I set up, I've probably 30 Instagram accounts and sort of run tests on all of them because I'm a tech reporter. So, you know, as you said, I'm not probably the typical user. But to mimic the behavior of some of these users, you know, I followed, for instance, some certain mommy bloggers, some anti-vaccine content, and then was immediately recommended, you know, more of that. And then followed a couple mainstream, you know, conservative meme pages and was immediately, you know, recommended really radical accounts that were publishing, you know, not just very fake news, conspiracies, saying that the New Zealand shooting was a hoax, a lot of other really terrible stuff. So
who are the typical targets?
It's really anyone that's susceptible to these views.
Right.
The majority of these audiences are actually targeted towards younger users. The typical liberal, which is this big conservative meme account with about 1 million followers, you know, even says in the bio, I think it says changing Gen Z one mind at a time or something.
Wow.
So they are oriented towards younger users who really use Instagram as a portal to discover, you know, news and information about their world.
Yeah.
Did you discover that a lot of these users who are putting this stuff out there actually believe what they're putting out there, or is it just a way to own liberals and to make liberals cry, liberal tears? They actually believe this stuff?
Well, I mean, I think like those two things are very intertwined. But I mean, yeah, a lot of the people that run these huge accounts too are essentially conservative influencers. We saw a couple of them just at CPAC this year. You know, these are big Instagram stars that are speaking to a younger generation, and they very vehemently believe some of this stuff. So, and it depends, of course. I mean, of course, you're going to get some trolls. You're going to get some people, you know, posting bad stuff. But no, especially with the QAnon people on Instagram, I mean, they are very dedicated to that and believe it very strongly.
Whenever I sort of read about conspiracy theories in social media, I think about Pizzagate and Reddit and the guy who showed up at the pizza parlor, you know, looking for the basement that didn't exist. And I wonder, are we seeing that sort of stuff here with Instagram? I mean, are people actually acting on some of the stuff that they're digging up on Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely acting in the sense that they're setting up their own Instagram accounts and they're taking digital action. I mean, I have no idea what they're doing offline, but they're certainly getting radicalized to a point that they're, you know, getting hyper-engaged, following sort of more and more accounts and going deeper down this rabbit hole, which is a problem because it can lead to that kind of offline behavior.
I mean, we saw with Facebook during the election, we're talking about bots and whether it's Russians or whatever, but they were actually organizing events that people were showing up to.
Right, yeah,
you know?
well, that's not hard to do on Instagram either.
So the risk, I guess, is that, look, there have always existed conspiracy theories. There have always been people who've had alternate views of what's happening in this world, whether it relates, specifically as it sometimes relates to science, for example, a man walking on the moon, the theory of evolution, right? The world is round. It is remarkable to me in 2019 that bubbling up into the discussion recently is whether the world is round or not. And I wonder what the danger of impressioning young minds with this stuff is going forward, because you're talking about people who are still finding their way and still trying to understand the way the world works.
Yes, and this is exactly the problem with YouTube and, you know, what we saw with Facebook, although a lot of younger users aren't using Facebook. Instagram is their portal to the world, and Instagram has all of the same problems as Facebook, but to a worse extent. I mean, there's no native reshare mechanism, but you can generate a massive audience very quickly on Instagram and spread your ideas very far and wide.
I imagine for Facebook, though, and for all social media platforms, but, you know, for Instagram, we're talking about just images, right? I mean, you can't get more
videos.
And videos, right? And short videos, but yeah, you're right, videos. But I mean, this is about freedom of expression. I mean, how do you?
It's free speech. It's protected.
I mean, how do you get a handle on it if you're Facebook?
I mean, free speech is totally protected by the government. These are at the same point, you know, these are corporations, and they make they decide what goes and what doesn't go on their platform, and they also decide what kind of communities they want to facilitate on that platform.
Are they doing anything?
No, they're not doing nearly even remotely enough. And we've seen that without media pressure and public backlash, that they won't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, Instagram just last week saying we're cracking down on anti-vax stuff, and here we are 2 weeks later, and nothing's
been done. Real quick before we let you go, the extremist views you encountered on Instagram, it's both for the right and the left, right? I mean, it just seems to me like there's a lot of talk in the media that it appears generally that these are right-wing views,
yes.
but they are also weirdo extremists on the left.
Let's be clear. There are weirdo extremists that believe in every side. I would say that the one thing to note, though, is that the right-wing sort of internet culture is. I don't want to call it more savvy, but they've been able to garner a wider audience. So there just aren't really there is not really the kind of left side bias. I mean, that's not to say there aren't like hard left anarchist people on Instagram. They're just not very adept at using the platform. And you see so many of these deep internet communities like, Reddit, 8chan, 4chan, they skew very hard right extremists, very nationalist, very white supremacist. And those views have spread more, they've proliferated more.
Interesting.
Taylor Lorenz, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great and really interesting information.